Okay, everybody. I'll now call the October 20th, 2022 meeting of the Conservation Commission to order with a roll call vote. Michael Lesser here. Announce yourselves, members.
Carol McGarry here.
Courtney Ack here.
Jacob Strauss, present.
Ooh, there we go.
Should have said present and accounted for.
Yeah, how accounted for, that's quite a heavy expectation. The okie dokie. Oh, I see
It looks
Matt
like
here
we
too.
have Matt signing on now too, so.
Okay, Matt, declare your presence for the meeting.
Present and accounted for. I apologize for my tardiness.
Okay. Thank you for being here. Okie doke. Any issues? Any topics to be added to the agenda that weren't reasonably anticipated more than 48 hours ago?
No, I have a question about the agenda. I was surprised to see that our last official topic was at 8:10. Is that correct? We really only have two
Don't jinx it.
hearings? Well, we can't
Well,
change now.
Well, we do have something else here.
There is
You look
a,
at the last discussion item.
there's a discussion item on at 8:20 for about 20 minutes. And that's.
We have
the,
others, but I'm just saying that we can spend a little bit of time on our tree stuff. Which is a draft that I haven't had a chance to look at. In which case we could start here. I haven't, oh, do we have a time for the solar project?
I told them 8:20 to 8:25.
Okay, fine.
Michael, were you expecting an update from me on land acquisition? Because nobody, I didn't realize that, if that were the case.
Well, I heard that they might have a meeting and therefore I was just wondering whether there was anything that came out of it or when to put it on there. But when we get there, you can tell us that, or actually we could deal with it now since we have till 7:30. We have some time here. So is there?
I mean, I'd have to go back and look at my notes. I missed Monday's meeting. In the meeting before that, I would have to go back to look at my notes. I don't remember anything substantive that would need to be decided on or reported to us, but I'd rather put it off till our next meeting so I can check back and make sure I've got the right updates.
Okay, fine. And I guess, right, you can check with them.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just keep it on the agenda for the next time.
Okay.
And covering some other little items here. I don't have, is there a warrant that we want to? Oh yeah, I think I saw a warrant that went out. There was just two small amounts. One for Deborah on postage and I think something else there. And then there was, I think, another thing for an announcement for a paper thing. I can't remember what it was, but it was about $60. So is there anything else I should comment on for the warrant, Deborah? Do you have any?
Yeah, it was just a invoice, supply invoice.
Oh, yeah,
and-
Mason.
Yeah, and the rest was, just certified mailers for me.
Right. Okay, so we dealt with the warrant thing there. We'll deal with the other one later. In terms of, let's see, we got the 8 minutes here. Are we going to have any administrative approvals? Joyce?
Not tonight, no.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I thought I saw some traffic. Okay. None. Okay. Is there a brief site issue? So we try to get some priority things that you might have, Joyce?
We have a new notice of intent filed today that will be on our next agenda. So we do need to schedule a site walk for 3 Prospect Street. That's the property with the isolated wetland and the abandoned house. They've filed a notice of intent for a new house.
Okay.
So we do need to schedule a site walk.
I guess, how is it most easily done? We do have we do have a number of members here, except for Kurt. Do you want to, do we even want to try to schedule it? And
Is anybody available on Wednesday, the 26th?
What time were you thinking?
Whatever time is convenient. It gets dark just before 6 now.
I am.
I guess I'm available 5 o'clock maybe. Well, it might be earlier, but I have something until about possibly 5 and I'm available in the morning.
Yeah, the 5 p.m. would work for me, as would the morning, sort of before 10:30 or so.
I think for me, the morning would be better. Earlier is better.
Yeah, I have to pick up my kid at 5, so
Okay, so we revise it. Anybody, what's the early, what, can you do it early, Matt? Or what's the time that's early for what works for people? Do they want to do it early 8 or get some work done and do it at 10? Pipe up, everybody.
I personally prefer 10, just to give me a chance to get kids on the bus and stuff, and then,
Yeah.
get myself dealt with, but I could do earlier than that as well.
It's
Either
10
of those is
o'clock.
fine for me.
It's 10 o'clock work. And Steve Scrimshaw, if you're still here, are you here, Steve?
I am. Hopefully I'll be appointed tonight. I have another computer open to the select board meeting,
So,
but I can meet probably anytime or not.
okay, so the 26th, you can, the 10 o'clock would work for you on the 26th.
Yes.
Jacob, Courtney, Carol,
Yep, that's fine.
that's fine with me.
It's okay.
10 o'clock, we've done it. 10
Very good.
a.m. on the 26th of October. Okay, any other, and the NOI should be what? Should be in the folder somehow beforehand or,
Yeah, I'll get it in the folder tomorrow.
okay, great. Any other site issues for you, Joyce?
No, there are not.
Okay, fine. Moving right along on things. We have the 5 minutes here of the warrant. Minutes are not ready. Although I see comments there on the bottleneck. I thought I started it, but I'm the bottleneck here. Warrant, the solar is coming later. Any announcements anybody want to make? Anybody, out of curiosity, I could not make it on Saturday to the conference. I don't know if anybody else did or signed up for any trainings.
I was there. I went to the how to run meeting sessions in the morning, and then one of the tree discussions by one of the Lawrence city managers, or somehow associated with the city of Lawrence in the afternoon.
Ah, well, then you can share your tree stuff when we do the trees if it's relevant, and you could share right now and tell me how to run this meeting better. You have 4 minutes to tell me how to do a better job here, or you can demonstrate by running the next meeting, or you can run the meeting. You can run the part of the meeting on the tree removal policy, and but more seriously, are there any kind of interesting illuminating points, or is it?
I think
too-
one of the more interesting, the most interesting topics that I heard were mostly listening to how other members of other commissions approach things, and sort of explaining which parts of what we do are necessary and which ones aren't. So there are very different approaches to scheduling meetings. So some of them just assign everybody the start of the meeting time, and then they figure out who shows up and rearrange there to have less context switching. Some of the groups do it the opposite, to give attendees an exact time for when they need to show up. Then there were a whole bunch of comments around sort of how in-person contentious matters, sort of how to handle those.
Yeah, no, Dover does that. Everybody's scheduled for 7:30. And then they just run it out. I don't know, did you get any sense that there's some reason that we should consider changing that? I think it sort of
I think it's convenient for applicants to know that they don't have to attend the whole meeting, but I wonder if there are cases when we have the same representative for multiple matters, if we should give them a single larger block so we can just go straight through and then not have to switch between items.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually on the septic stuff, but usually he gets, I mean, with the Zoom, it makes it a lot easier when you used to think of people coming to a in-person meeting. Well, yeah, somehow I feel the public is better served with specific times. I don't know what others people feel, whether, does anybody else think we should reconsider how we do things?
I don't think so. I think we're okay right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing about specific times is sometimes it means that we have to like, start a hearing, and then if we run out of time, then we have to, close it and start the next one, or, pause it and start the next one. So, but that doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I could almost see the other thing working better when it's more in person maybe, but with the Zoom, the flexibility of people coming and going seems to add. I might be considering once we go to in person at some point, that we might think about that. Just for the issue you brought up, Carol. Okay, so
But what is the interim agent thing? Since she has had experience on the other side.
The advantage of starting everything at one time is that if you have a number of projects that continue and don't tell you ahead of time in your agenda, you don't have big blocks of blank time. That's an advantage. But if you start everything at once, you have to control how long things go on, or your agenda can get away from you if you have everybody start at the same time. You control the meeting fairly well, and you seem to have timed things fairly well. So what you do work. And so far, a lot of people haven't canceled that have been a problem. That's usually the big problem with starting at times, is that you end up with big blocks of blank time, and you end up waiting around for things on a later agenda if people have continued something.
Okay, yeah, we haven't too much of that problem yet. So I guess we're okay for the moment. Okay, so we'll keep it on the back burner for now, and we'll keep doing what we're doing now. We'll get back to any other tidbits afterwards, but we're holding up the owner for the RDA at 7:30. I guess Jacob will have to step on the other side of the screen as recuse himself. Or actually, now we can present. So now opening up the public hearing for the request for determination applicability for 58 Mill Street for the construction of an 8x16 storage shed within the buffer zone, removal and shortening of an existing 9-inch snag leaning over the shed site. Owner is Jacob Strauss. So who's presenting this?
That would be me. Why don't I let's see if screen sharing works. Let's see, window. Let's see if that works. Is that showing any? Let me know if that starts showing anything.
Yep.
Should be. Okay, so you should be seeing a sort of the plot plan of sort of that portion of sort of my neighborhood, which with 58 Mill Street in the middle. There are two areas of wetlands right near the house. So there's the large mapped one way on the west side. That's not relevant for tonight. But then there's also a swampy area that sits between Saddlebrook Road here. And can you see my cursor when I move it
Yes.
around? Okay. That sits here and sort of sits in my neighbor's backyard to the north there mostly. this spring, I made plans to build a shed sort of in this area in the front yard on the south side of the driveway. And I'll zoom in, I'll show a better zoomed in area here. And had a base, sort of a crushed stone pad installed for that. That happened in June. Over the summer, I sort of figured out that the extent of this was actually quite close to the, or I suspected that the extent of this particular wetland area was quite a bit, was close enough to the driveway that I needed to get it delineated and figure out where it actually was. And that happened in the end of September, September 20th. So this is now the resulting delineation zoomed in on this particular area. So this is where the edge of the BVW is, bordering vegetated wetland is. And down here, this is the planned shed site. Which is, it's the closest distance from here to the wetlands is 83 feet. This here is an existing stone walkway, and this segment here is new to connect and link up to it. The snag, which I mentioned, is not shown on this plan, but it's basically under the number 1 here in the 100-foot buffer zone. I can switch to some pictures of that area in a minute. So I want this probably to zoom in here. So this let me zoom in more. This first picture here, this is sort of an example of the design, sort of the same type of plan. This is not something I have sort of schematics for, but that's the size and shape of what I'm intending. This picture here, I can switch to a higher resolution version of this if we like. This is what the stone pad looks like today. This is facing directly towards the wetland area. So in between here, we have sort of a number of different existing plantings, then the driveway, then a line of forsythia, and then beyond that is where the wetland area actually is. And this is looking the other direction. This is looking up the hill, sort of in the northeast direction. This is the snag right here. It's basically leaning right over the shed site. And this area here is one area where I'm planning on putting some shrubs after the shed is built. That would be next spring at this point. And then this picture is looking east. This is looking towards Mill Street up here. This is the driveway, sort of looking up the hill, and this is the walkway. And this area here is another area where I'm planning putting ground covers, so sort of low bush blueberries and ferns. Sort of again after that would be next spring again. Let's see. And beyond that, what questions do people have?
Jacob, how big is the kind of the gravel pad that you installed?
So it's basically it's about a couple feet beyond the 8x16. And this one, it says it was 14 by 19, so it's about a foot. So it's supposed to have a 2 or 3 foot wide walkway on the door side, and then extend a foot beyond the boundaries of the shed in each direction there.
So it's 14 by 19 feet altogether?
Yep.
Okay, so it's, I guess, 266 square feet based on my elementary school multiplication.
Okay.
Well, I was asking because I was looking at the Sherborn regulations, and, you know, alterations like patios, they're less than 150 square feet in existing lawn are exempt activities. So since this is a little bit bigger, it's not, I guess it's not.
It's not a lawn either. It's sort of, it was a landscaped area, but the lawn is further to the southwest portion here. So I don't think that would apply.
Okay, so it's just kind of a wooded area within the 100.
It's a landscaped wooded area. I mean, there's a sprinkler system installed throughout this whole area, but it's
So it's altered, so it's an altered area, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um,
altered area.
It's not, it wasn't natural buffer to begin with.
Right.
But it's decent as buffers go. It's not just
No.
a green lawn.
Yeah,
Yes,
'cause it's wooded and had some, you said you removed some shrubs, right?
Yeah, I removed two blueberry plants, and then there were a bunch of seedlings. So probably about 20% of that area had something green on it.
Okay, so it's just kind of wooded and leafy and stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Are you thinking about putting blueberries back?
Not the high bush
Yeah.
blueberries. The high bush blueberries there are not happy there. But I
Okay.
am planning on putting low bush blueberries there. I think they would be more appropriate for that spot.
Right. So you
Uh,
did you plant those there
I,
originally?
that was a prior owner. I don't
Oh,
know.
okay, but they weren't just like naturally growing there.
No, there's
Okay.
a group. There's somewhere between 4 and 7 of them that still remain right next to that
Mm.
spot.
Yeah. So yeah, it seems like a good idea to plant something that would be happier in that spot.
Right. Yeah.
Is
So
the clethra happier there? Because I noticed.
not
in-
this year, but in other years, yes.
Yeah.
So you see, let's see, do I have a good view of that? Here, so in a normal year, along the driveway here, you can hardly see through it all. This year, it all died. I mean, it looks like it's still, I mean, it looks like the plants are still alive and they will come back. So there's no need to change anything there.
Yeah, so that was all
but
clethra at some point, is that what you're
There's
saying?
plethora, and then there's a row of some sort of dogwoods, but shrub-sized dogwoods. I'm not entirely sure which kind behind that also here.
Mhm.
But they look happier than the clethra does this year.
Okay.
Other people have any questions? I guess I'll go then. Just, right, I guess this is already sort of altered buffer zone, and I guess it is, I guess as we say here, even though it's relatively small, it's creating some impervious area. When I look at this, but I guess it's a thing of whether some form of mitigation. You're planning on revegetating some of the with shrubs, I guess, to some areas around the shed. Is that what you're planning on doing around this shed?
That's correct. On this side, this area is probably 20 feet long here in this direction. And that's where I'm planning on putting larger shrubs. And in this area, sort of right in this corner here, shorter things. So more ground covers.
So there'll be some revegetation of the area, the shrub layer, that's more than the square footage of the
Yep.
shed itself. And
Yes.
and probably the extra, and the gravel, I guess, there. Is a sort of a similar area, basically, since we're talking about not very large areas. But I guess it is because, right, the square footage of the extra gravel path. I guess I would just, even though it's in a little bit of a gray area for me about the mitigation issue, but because you have the impervious, the gravel's pervious, that having sort of replanting, revegetation, so improved buffer zone of an equal area to the gravel path and the shed itself seems like a reasonable balance.
Well, I was looking at what's exempt, and construction of an unpaved walkway less than 30 inches wide for private pedestrian use is exempt. It sounds like this is 4 feet, so it maybe is a little bit big.
I think
Doesn't
it's, yeah,
sound
I think
bigger.
it's a little bit too wide to account for that
Yeah.
particular exception.
Some part of it might be
No, it doesn't have to be one to one,
eligible
right,
for
right.
mitigation, yeah.
I would say that if we specify in here that you're doing replanting, what areas would you feel comfortable saying that you're sort of the dimension of areas that you're replanting, Jacob, to say that we could just put it in the
Let's see. So
the
this
description.
distance here is about 20 feet, and this is, call it 10 feet. So this is about, this area here is about 100 square feet.
So what's the
then
dimension there? That's what the
This
front,
This
he's
dimension
putting
of
a
the triangle
base
is 20
here.
feet.
what?
This
Oh, 20 by 10 by,
20 by 10
and it's a right triangle is what you're
is
saying.
the right triangle.
Okay,
And then this distance here, it's 20 feet in one direction, and it's probably half that in the other direction again.
okay, so that's maybe
So-
another 300. Okay, so we're getting comparable to the number of the square footage there and maybe the excess of the there. So we could put in the project description.
Yep, it's in the project.
That we could add to that, that basically for mitigation, there's gonna be revegetation with native shrubs, basically, with native shrubs.
Did you specify how many, Jacob, how many shrubs you're in that area?
So in this section of the application here, sort of types and
Oh, I didn't see that. Oh,
numbers. I mean, I'm planning on getting more than this, but I don't know if I'm going to run into ledge or things like that in the ground. And if not, I'll put them somewhere else. Or rather, if I do, I'll put them somewhere else in the yard.
Okay, 3 to 5, okay.
Do you have any of those growing in that area? Just out of curiosity.
No, so we have. I mean, that's why I picked these, is because there aren't any representatives of these types in that area of the yard. We do have Lowbush blueberry on the other side of the yard. We don't have these kinds of ferns. Most of the ferns we have are the hay-scented ferns. So these are all different types there. We do have a spice bush somewhere else in the yard on the other side, but we don't have. I think we have one mountain laurel somewhere. I forget where, but we don't have any of the others.
Yeah. I'm just curious because I don't know, mountain laurel is like, I find it's like you put it somewhere and it's like if it doesn't like it, it just like withers and does pathetic. So
Right. So I would put one of them there and see how it does, but I
yeah,
wouldn't. But
yeah,
that wouldn't be more than
yeah. And definitely the deer like to eat it. So
The same thing I would say with the viburnum. I've had deer. I mean, one of the things about the Clethra alnifolia is that it's all over town and the deer don't seem to hammer it as much. So I would recommend adding in planting area 1, if it's big enough, adding several of those. Just because,
Okay, sort of
just
closer to
guarantee
where
that
the existing ones are.
just so you guarantee that you for sure are going to get some real cover there.
I mean, what you've picked
Well,
is
Courtney and I are
totally
kind of
fine.
cynical, so
Yeah, what you've picked is totally fine. I'm just trying to give you some planterly advice from mistakes that I've made.
same here.
Mhm.
You know, another one that hasn't been hammered by the deer in my yard and does fine in shade, but I'm not sure how well it does in wetter conditions because I have a very dry yard, is hazelnut, which does quite well. And for some reason, the deer haven't been eating it, so I don't know, might be one that might work for you.
Yeah, I have a lot of hazelnut around my house and the deer browse it, but they don't seem to do it. It's still pretty like thick.
Yeah.
Okay,
Fun times.
by your advice, I would say that is in the file is the special conditions amended for the terminating applicability. All I would want to do is, even though it says installation of native plantings around the shed, I would just want to add to that, Joyce, that we're talking about in areas that are about 300 square feet. Just put an actual number in there. And
Yeah,
I won't
it's
get
not,
into the density there, and so, because we can make, I don't think we have to, I don't know if we want to get into a minimum number of, like we sometimes offer, we just get at least sort of like a minimum number of whether we want to say that. Got 8 there. In the description, you have, let's say, 4, 8 there. That's about 12, roughly. Shrubs that we're talking about roughly, but whether we want to put in that number and saying the 300 square feet with at least 12 shrubs, native shrubs. and just stick it in the project description.
That seems a little low to me for 300 square feet, I guess, in terms of trying to create some
Okay,
cover.
well, what
Jacob,
number?
how did you kind of think about that? Like, were you trying to separate them by 5 or 10, 5 feet, or what were your thinkings?
So for the ground cover, it was sort of figure out that a bunch of them are going to go in a line up here, and then a bunch more sort of filling out the rest of the lower part of the triangle here. For this one, it was mostly around figuring out how much space trying to figure out how much space I should leave if they get large, but sort of I can certainly put in more in there.
Well, let's pick a number, guys. We have to do it. We have to end this soon.
Yeah, I just
I thought the
feel like if
number he had there was fine.
We could have
I'm
12.
not sure if it's 20 feet, it doesn't, if this is a 20-foot by 10-foot, that seems low to me.
Yes, normally we have like, well, we have like 6 foot on center, for example, which is 36 feet square for that. And into that, that's about 8 plants in that area there, which he has about 8 there in the bigger area. So it's not far off from the kind of 6 foot centering that we've been talking about other times.
6 feet, so you're saying 6 plants for 36 square feet?
I'm saying that if you do it 6 foot on center,
Yeah,
you're getting a plant every 36 square feet. And therefore, 200 divided by the 36 is roughly whatever,
like 5.
6 plants or whatever it is, 6. So therefore, it's not that far off from what we've used. So
Okay,
I would like to just put that 12 or more and some ground cover. We could put it in there. And on that note, I'm going to move that we that this is a -3 determination with the conditions of the mitigation here, as well as the other conditions about the snag could be cut and not spreading any debris, and no equipment outside of the lawn area. Do I have a second? Yes.
I had a question about that, although you
Let me
just.
get a second first.
Second.
and then
Second.
we'll-
First,
Okay, discussion.
yeah. I guess I want to have some clarity from you, Michael, on when somebody has an RDA and we say it's a -3, we're basically saying we're not requiring of filing the notice of intent because the area is not subject to protection under the act. Isn't that what we're saying?
No, we're also saying that it's not, the project also won't have adverse impact on the wetlands. I haven't read that. I have to go find my sheet there. But
3 says the work described on reference plans and documents is within an area subject to protection under the act and will remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area. Therefore, said work requires the filing of a notice of intent. So basically, 3 basically says it's under
That in the
that's
No,
positive.
the
Yeah,
act, right?
under the
that's
It's
the
a
positive.
negative. It's a
That's the
negative.
positive. So the negative says it's not under wetland jurisdiction?
No, if you read number 3, a negative is that the work will not alter an area subject to protection under the act, and therefore the work does not require the filing of a notice of intent. It says the work is in the buffer zone, but will not alter an area subject to protection, that adjacent wetland meaning. So it's in the buffer zone, but it won't affect the wetland, is what it's saying.
As conditioned.
Correct.
I think we've had discussions about this before, and it seems like we're just going back to this kind of more relaxed approach.
I don't think so. This is certainly what we've been doing for years. I don't think that this project being handled as an RDA is anything different than we've done for the last many years. So I don't personally see this as quote unquote a relaxation, which has all sorts of implications that I have some issues around saying it as.
I know we've had discussions about it in the past, but
And it is the -3 is the work, as she read, it's in the buffer zone. but we're saying it won't alter the resource area. If you read the language of a -3. Is that, which is how we've been doing RDAs for many years. I guess I'd like to move on and we can come back to this as a discussion item later. And I think this is an appropriate one, but we should talk about it because I have concerns if this is being viewed as a relaxation of what we've been doing. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Courtney?
Aye.
Jacob's abstaining or recused. Carol?
I'm gonna abstain. I would just want to have more clarification on this.
Okay, Matt?
Aye.
Okay, so we have a 3-0-1 with one recused. I don't know if that's an abstain or what. Okay, that means the DOA is settled. Okay, it's now 7:54. Sorry for the delay. We are now moving on. We'll pick up the discussion of this topic later. Okay, now we have the land management report. I see we have
Everybody.
everybody. We have Kelly. Hi, Sam.
Lou?
Hi, Xenia, who I guess I remember from months ago, I guess, when we used to talk. And Carol, I guess, is also. So go forth.
Okay. Want to do three things. The first is a reality check about the basic approach of a land management working group, which hasn't been discussed by the Conservation Commission in ages. There are a bunch of new members. Want to make sure that you know who we are. If anybody else wants to join the group, please. And the whole idea is that if the Conservation Commission from scratch tried to prioritize and address the many issues coming up, it would consume the entire agenda. And having a working group of people who could take whatever time is necessary to think through the issues, figure out what's immediate and priorities, and make recommendations to the Conservation Commission is by far the most efficient and effective way of doing it. And I just wondered, want Xenia and Sam to introduce themselves, because for most members of the commission, they are new faces. They're both being dragged into more and more conservation town activities, and at least so far, they've been willing to do it, which is terrific. Xenia, why don't you say a word or two about yourself? Muted. Mute.
Unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I here?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have not been dragged. I like it. I've been to one Conservation Commission meeting several months ago. And this was actually, the land management group seems to me just more to my liking. What do you want us to say? Anything else?
Or just comment that you seem to know quite a bit about planting and into management.
Plants are something I just really love. Yeah, so I'm really eager to learn from Sam, especially, and anybody else who can teach me, which is most people, can teach me more about native plants.
Sam.
So,
My name is Sam Nelson. My husband and I moved to Sherborn about 10 years ago. We live on Lake Street on the slope of Pine Hill. And one of the things I like most about Sherborn is the wooded trails, the abundant wildlife, the natural habitat. So I'm really very happy to participate in this land management working group. In addition to this working group, I'm also on Forest and Trails, the Open Space Committee, on the Climate Change Working Group, I think with Michael and with Carol. I've been working on the Library Landscape Committee and the Town Campus Landscape Project. I have a background in landscape design, and I was a tour guide at Garden in the Woods for a few years. So happy to bring my experience and interest to the Conservation Commission.
Thank you. You neglected to mention you're the new chair of the Open Space Committee.
Sorry, so I did get roped into that.
Congratulations.
Does anybody want to comment on or question the approach of using a working group to sort of vet and prepare issues?
Oh my God, no, like we have so much work to do. Like the more people that can vet issues, the better.
Wonderful. Is there anybody on the commission who would like to join us, who has a particular interest in the reservations and the land management part of the commission's responsibility?
I just had a question first. As noted, there was a comment in there saying that this working group is not subject to the open meetings, and I'm wondering sort of what do we have? What does it have to do such that that is true? Is it just that they don't have the ability to approve anything on their own? Is that the distinction?
No, there's not a quorum on it. Carol is the only Conservation Commission member.
I see. Okay.
So there is no quorum from any group. Now, if we were officially appointed by the Conservation Commission to do what we're doing, we would be an official subcommittee, and a subcommittee is subject to the open meeting law. But we are a flexible group. There's no official appointment to it, and so we're not a subcommittee. And that gives us a lot of flexibility. It means we don't have to post meetings. We're not authorized to make any decisions. We just bring recommendations to you.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, now I sent out a background briefing paper. I very much apologize, Jacob and Steve, I didn't have you on my list. And I wonder maybe Deborah or Joyce, if you could send me their email addresses and contact. And I wonder, Jacob, you're official, I gather, Steve, you're not quite yet. Is there a Dropbox or some vehicle by which you have seen the briefing memo?
Yes, I've read it.
Great. I'm not going to go through it, but does anybody have questions about any aspect of it? Great.
You want to speak? I have some, but
Oh, okay.
I try to hold back, let other people speak first. I guess we do have to think about, right, obviously, I'll step back and say, yes, I've agreed with this concept of this kind of land management working group. And I'll continue to believe in it, as it is very useful. And all decisions come back to us anyway for those on the commission itself. And I do think what will be interesting is to see, right, given the budget issues and the fact that we are now going to enter something a little bit different than we've done before, where we do have this significant budget amount that we've always talked about. What we have to do is what's buried in the, not buried, but part of the good overview is all the fact that we have these inventory reports for several properties in town. And there are sets of recommendations. And that I would like to think in terms of whether the working group is going to take its first cut at sort of working through those recommendations and seeing what you think makes the most sense against some of the budget allocations that we have to do land management. Is that is that a high priority task that you see for yourselves?
At some point, we will take each reservation inventory in order and look over the recommendations carefully. The most urgent ones have to do with multiple mowings of the fields, and that's being done already. We felt that since we weren't even approved in the sense of the commission liking this approach, not to get into anything controversial or very complex. And the recommended actions we're bringing to you tonight should be a pretty easy group to authorize because they've been thought of for years. They're things we can actually do in a fairly reasonable time frame. It's a good way to start off, basically. But yes, the inventories have some very good recommendations, and we're not getting to them immediately because what we have to do after the signage recommendations is start talking about the fiscal year 24 budget, which is going to be a really difficult one.
Right, I guess, right, it overlaps. So one time we're trying to figure out how to do our FY 23. At the same time, we got to sort out FY 24.
Exactly, yeah.
What are the immediate activities that you're looking for? I'm trying to think in what you said.
I apologize. I don't know how to use screen share. Is it possible for anybody to put that one page thing
Sure.
up on the screen?
I can do that. I have it up here. Let me just move this thing out of the way here.
No, I'm talking, Michael, about the one page,
Oh,
the proposals for action.
oh, there's a separate one page that's not in this file.
Right.
Yeah,
Whoops.
it's in our file, but if you close, Michael, I can share my screen.
Why don't you do that? Because I didn't see it. Okay, that's why I guess I
Oh.
was asking. I missed it somehow. Sorry.
It's okay. I sent it out on Wednesday.
Yeah, no, generally what we do is we have, even though you don't have access to it, we have folders
Yeah.
for each meeting. And I guess.
Oh, Joyce, thank you. So, again, these are actions that really need to get done. None of it is make work. All of it has been discussed for quite a while, but never officially sort of authorized, except for the very first. And we thought it was a really good place to start. The Conservation Commission approved the new reservation signs for Hopestill, Leland, and Schoolhouse reservations some time ago, with SFTA providing the funding. Carol made the presentation, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago. It was approved for Hopestill and Leland. We recommended not going ahead with Schoolhouse for various reasons. And we want to substitute a new sign at the end of Bear Hill Road for Hidden Meadow in place of the Schoolhouse sign. That does need a vote if we can go ahead and just buy the signs and get them installed. That's all teed up and ready to go.
Okay.
The Barber Barn Gardens, those are 3 different recommendations. We don't have price tags. We don't have details. What we're asking for is an approval sort of in direction. Yes, this is a good direction to go, and we will bring specific proposal for the next meeting or the one after that. Similarly, for the self-guided trail that Jean laid out, that was over 3 years ago. many of the signs are obsolete, falling apart, and we wanted to make some significant changes in how that worked. Finally, the tennis court is getting pretty clogged with invasives again, and we can just get that brush hogged. I think Sean will be able to do that for free, but if not, it would only be $200 or so.
Okay, scroll back, I guess. Do I have, given that we have some limited time, because we started a little late with you, although we haven't.
The only thing there that needs a vote is the Hidden Meadow sign.
Okay, I guess I guess signage is good, so people know what things are there. So I move that we enable, this would be again done for the Sherborn Forest and Trail, like, just to be clear. Okay, I move that that give permission for a sign for Hidden Meadow at the Bear Hill road end, to be installed by the Sherborn Forest and Trail Association. You have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, I, Jacob,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Carol.
Aye.
Okay, 5-0, that's done.
Okay,
As to guidance on the other ones, I think all the other stuff, especially around the Barbara, made sense to me. Does anybody else, do you want guidance?
I don't think this needs a vote. We just want a sense of direction.
Does anybody
I-
else have any problems with that stuff?
I think this all sounds reasonable. The last time I walked around here, I noticed several of these things and wondered why they are. So this looks like it would be an improvement to me.
Thank you.
Well, if you know what you want to grow there, you can let me know and I could start some seeds. We save money that way.
We don't yet.
Well, keep that in mind.
Right.
Jacob, are you interested in joining us?
Probably from time to time I could zoom in, but I think, Jacob, are you interested? Anyone?
Well, both of you could participate at different times. It won't create a
Yeah.
quorum.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay. Carol, Sam, Xenia, do you have anything else you'd like to bring up?
I think that the working group is more fun than the commission. Anybody wants to have fun.
Yes, it would seem that way. I would agree.
For obvious reasons. We don't have to regulate.
All right. So, but no, thank you
Okay,
very
then.
much. We'll see how interested attendance varies over time. You can let people know if you want to entice things, you can send out whatever announcements for when you're meeting. You can send
Okay,
it out to the
I'll-
entire meeting group and people can decide if they want to opt in, and
That's a little bit difficult because if for some reason 4 commissioners.
don't worry about it. It'll never happen. And if it does happen, somebody will be more than happy to drop out. So I wouldn't
If
worry
we could
about
have
that.
another 15 minutes at the beginning or early of the next agenda, that would be great.
Yes, okay, fine. That sounds good. We'll do that.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Commission.
Okay, nice to meet everybody there, and thank you very much for your work. Okay, bye.
Aye.
Okay, I am now. Hold on, I gotta go get here. Okay, I'm now reopening the continued public hearing on the abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for 26 Western Ave for the proposal to review a resource area delineation. Okay, Joyce and DeShang, take it away.
Desang, do you want to share your revised plan
Yeah, okay, let me just get to
and
it.
maybe
Let's-
go through the flag?
Second. Sure, and I saw you will share, that's why I didn't get ready.
I'm happy to share it if you like.
What?
Yeah. No, I didn't get it. quick view.
All right,
That's not the right one.
okay,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, appreciate it.
all right, why don't you walk through it the way we walk through it?
Yeah, we started near the shed of the garage, and which is like a 264, and if you can see over there.
So
to-
this,
to-
yeah, so just to start out, this is an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for 26 Western Ave. And Deshang had delineated the wetlands on the property. And as part of this application, he and I walked the wetland line. So that's what he's gonna go through now. We walked all the flags and did soils around the whole property. And he's gonna outline the results.
Yes, okay, so Tuesday afternoon, we went to the site because of the site is to extend, to have lots of disturbance, there's a limit of a lawn, so we used lots of soils. So we started at the corner of the existing garage, which is 264, which was the wetlands that moved up like about 6 feet. And then, so continued on, it's all pretty much for the edge of the lawn. And there's a steep slope in the area of a 270. So we moved a few feet up too, and then they eliminated 271. So to connect the 270 new to the 272. I think that section pretty much good now. And then we move to the starting point where it's close to that utility or the electric transfer station starting on CL1. I think it should be CLW, Creative Land and the Water. So for some who was misspelled it, there should be Creative Land and Water, not Water and Land. One, so those are pretty follow the toe of slope. And then in the area of 6 to 7 to 8, that's major. It's like in the old car paths, there's some ruts. So it looks like I had some water funneled to there. So that's the biggest move to a point is probably to 63 feet because of it's followed basically the CLW number 6, so which moved up about 63 feet. That's a biggest move around this section from number 6 to number 11. So, and so then 12 is remained the same. And so 13 moved to like about a few, I think it's 6 feet up. So, and then that's pretty much this. Oh yeah, there's another 3 feet of move of that 20. So CW 20. And then we move to the other side of the driveway. And so most of the fracs are pretty straight because there's that dredged ditch, but the land is kind of flat. We did quite a few soils to check to confirm it's upland soils around the section. And until we get to about flag 207, 208 area, we decided to eliminate 208, connect 207 to 209. And then we move, follow that coming, that area was also pretty straight, but we walked all the way to the stone wall, which is the property line, and stopped there, and then continued to another stone wall. And so there's not really much of it. You can see it's pretty much follow the contour lines. And until we get to back to the garage, so which we eliminated a little tiny peninsula. So and we connected the 262 directly to 264N. So, yeah, I mean, so if you remember, we had filed a NOI for soil testing, which we based on the old lines. So we haven't get started yet. So the soil testing has not started yet. So this delineation will help us to make sure we are testing in a desirable area. Yeah, so, yeah, Joyce, if I miss anything, so.
Could you go, you can leave it there. I just had a question before you take it off. That the plans need to say the type of wetlands on them for the NRAD. So the plan needs to be changed to include that. I assume these are BVW.
Yes, they are.
That needs to be specified on the plan for this. And I'm trying to understand what, it's a little quirky thing, what it means. I guess it doesn't make a difference between in the corner there where you have the 115 to 120 to 200. There's that weird little zig in and out, this sort of,
Right here?
yeah, right there.
Well, what it means is, this is a wetland here, and this is a wetland here, and there was a path that what allowed us to go through. They
Right,
did
a
not
culvert.
delineate any further. So all we reviewed were the flags that were set out on the property.
Right.
So so what does this mean about that area that's sort of down that path? Are we saying anything at all about whether that's a wetland
No.
area?
Nope. All we're approving are these flags. If they do any work over here, it
Have to
be delineated.
refile. Yeah. At this point, we are not, we don't expecting any activities going into there. It's a little probably old farm field.
This
Yeah.
application doesn't say that this is all the wetlands that are on the property, because there are wetlands over in this area
On the
here.
west
Right.
side?
What it's saying is we reviewed the lines that he shows on the plan, delineated the lines he shows on the plan.
Okay, so for example, if there were another entrance to the property on the west side in this large unlabeled area, it's not saying anything either way on the west
Correct.
side. It's not
Correct.
saying anything at all about whether that's wetland or upland.
That's correct.
Okay, I guess I got to read the details of a ANRAD because I thought it was supposed to be.
No, it's not.
I
If there,
know
if
we've
there-
had this discussion and I always get stuck on it. Then I would like it to be explicit.
the explicit part is, all we're approving are and we can call out the flag numbers from flag number whatever to flag number whatever, but again, if it's not shown in the plan, it's not being approved.
Right.
But Michael, since they have to fix the plan anyway to say what the wetlands are on there, I mean, would it be possible to just put a note in that area, like
Yeah, that's what I
on
would.
just
say.
on the plan?
Not delineated.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
No,
that's
yeah, we
what-
can, we can make it.
I was going to have it in the statement, but that's good. Add that there. That'll deal with my concern.
Mhm. Okay, no,
Um,
it's fine.
Okay. And if there's any other area on the property, is the stone wall the actual property line? I assume that.
Here it is, here
Yeah.
it's not.
This is internal, but this is all wetlands beyond that.
All here is wetland.
Right. Okay, as long as we have that note, then I'm fine with that. What other issues do we have? So we're basically approving these here. And looking under the okay, so it's basically all we have is a plan that we approve essentially. I'm just pulling up the Form 4B that's in the file there, the order. I didn't get a chance to look at it before the meeting. It's loading. Okay, are there any issues, Joyce, other than
No,
we've heard and everything has been changed as per your field work?
so yes, Deshang and I both made field notes as we were going through there. He revised the plan. I printed it to scale and checked all the flags that he changed, and they all matched the dimensions we agreed on.
Great. Okay, does anybody else have any other questions or issues? Okay, in that case, I move that we approve this resource area delineation as per the plan, with the changes to be made to specify that it's a BVW, and that the area that's not been delineated is also noted on the plan.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael Lesser, aye. Courtney,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Jacob.
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. You have a delineation, and you can see whether you want to change your NOI. I don't know if there's, I guess they could be minor modifications to the NOI if you're changing your testing sites.
Right, yeah,
but-
we'll probably just do an admin kind of to adjust that and send in one. And I will get the plan to Debbie tomorrow.
So
So
if you would email it to Shane,
I can
and,
email tonight.
and
If
put
that's
today's
good
date
enough,
on
or
it,
I need a hard copy.
today's date,
Yeah, do you need a hard copy?
yes, we will need a hard copy.
Right, just two, right? Two for the filing.
Yes, but the office isn't open tomorrow, so you can bring it in on Tuesday.
Oh, you know, not open, it's not open in the morning, no?
Tomorrow's Friday.
Not on Friday.
But
Okay.
if you email it to me tonight, I can revise the permit.
Yeah, I will get the today's date as the last revision, so it will be, it's a two notes, BVW and not delineated in the southwest, what's the corner, southwest corner, yeah,
Is that the southeast
southeast
corner?
corner, southeast corner.
Right.
Okay, yeah, no, I will, yeah, just we'll write in that area. Okay, yeah, we'll do. I'm going to email that and with the, in a few minutes with the latest revision. Okay, for today. All right, thanks a lot.
Okay, good. We're done with that. Moving on to, we have, I see Evan Turner and Ken Gray here. That we have a little, whatever, 20-minute presentation or discussion before we have other stuff on a project that they would like to talk about. So I let you have the screen and the floor, Mr. Turner.
Thank you, sir. For those who haven't met me, I am Evan Turner. I am a solar developer working with Mr. Ken Gray on their 90 Maple Street property. I guess the purpose of tonight is not to start an application or any of that. It's to, I guess, provide information to the board, commission, sorry, in this case, largely for, time for you to just to think about it in the back of your minds and be aware of it, as well as so you don't have to hear it through the grapevine. It will take, the better part of a year to put together formal applications, presuming everything goes correctly to get to that stage. And I like to be able to introduce the concept of the idea early, because otherwise rumor mills will outrun the actual project very quickly. And of course, this is a large property in a development sensitive area in a town that is very hands-on and aware of the development that takes place in it. And to the best of my knowledge, this will be the largest array in the area. It might be the largest single array if it's as conceived inside the Beltway proper. So certainly not a small endeavor so far as distributed solar goes in Massachusetts. What I'd like to do tonight is I'm going to give you guys a sort of a screenshot picture of the property now and just kind of walk you through how I see the wetlands. I've done, several dozen solar arrays. So there's a lot of intersection on any big property, even many small ones, on how the wetlands shape the project, and what, of course, what it looks like to start with, what it might look like to finish, and all the other various project impacts that, in fact, the development process and the final product. I know all of those aren't in your jurisdiction and wheelhouse, but all of them do intersect in some way. So I feel it's good to be generally aware. What this is not, though, very clearly for everyone listening, watching, it's not a public hearing for votes. It's not a, here's something I approve of or don't approve of. Basically, my time to make a presentation to the board, who are certainly not required to interact in any way. And I'm certainly not looking for the kind of interaction that mimics an actual public hearing, where the neighbors and general public would be invited and involved to their heart's desire. So any questions so far?
Evan, can you tell us what your company's name is? It sounds like you're a solar developer.
Yes, ma'am. So it's just me, but the LLC will be Aries Power Systems. And that comes, there's an Indian company by that name, because apparently I just didn't Google myself well enough when I was making that up several years ago. I flew an EP-3 Aries plane in the Navy, so when I was making up an LLC to trade under, I just picked that name coming out of the military. So, but otherwise I must have missed something, or they came along after me. But it's just me. So I do this, sometimes for other larger shops, but also many times for myself on these singular projects.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, let me share my screen here. Screen 2, check. All right. So is everybody looking at some green and blue and orange?
Got it.
All right, so to zoom out here, I'll give you guys the larger site. So we're here in Northwest Sherborn. Town hall right over here, main ways here. Couple, the large farms on the west side of town, relative to me, substation here, right up the street from the large, car facility. The street that it's on, Maple Street, coming from the west, snaking all the way to the middle of town, just by the town hall, right over here. The site itself is approximately 100 acres north of Maple Street on the maps you see here. What I've colorized this to be is that it's just a screenshot of the Oliver mapping system with parcels on it. Green is the wetlands that those maps show, which are certainly super preliminary and almost never encapsulate the final wetland product once it's delineated. The orange on here would be the borders of those, which I've been set to a light orange setback area. And then I've put a blue area overlay for the otherwise upland on the maps as they exist now. And then on the edges of the parcel, there's a similar 100-foot buffer, which is a bylaw directive item, very similar, just in size and depth to the 100-foot theoretical wetlands setback. The property right now, if you've been out there with kin or family, actively logged at a kin scale, certainly not regular machine commercial logging, but large portions of it have been cut for kin's firewood business, as well as knocking down, I believe, a fair number of dead trees that are on and around the upland areas, largely dead due to pests and some drought stress as well, all of it, of course, contributing. Otherwise, though, it's a forested property. A number of trails run through the site, and the access here, as we zoom in, comes off of Maple Street. So frontage here, although of course the picture clips the corner. You'll remember the house here on 90 Maple to the right as you're driving west, next to kin's piles of firewood, with two accesses in the back that are dirt roads presently. Pickup truck worthy, but not greater than that for solar purposes by any means, coming back through here on one side here and one on the other. I believe you guys may be moderately familiar with the site based on some previous development concepts that have come through boards in towns, but just, if I'm being duplicative, I appreciate your courtesy of that, just in case I'm not. The acreage this comes out to, and this has been a discussion with the other boards. I did a smattering with folks, some Concom, some planning board, some select board, town planner folks first. And I also spoke with the planning board in a similar capacity as this. About 100 acres. The site, as the wetlands look now, which is of course understood to be incomplete and pre-delineation, is about 50 acres of non-buffer upland. So in that case, that's the blue layer that becomes yellow when I click on it, of 234 or 2,234,000 square feet, which is about 51.5 acres, I believe. I've done the math, I just can't remember it exactly. So the idea on the site is to use the upland area with crossings as required to get in the back for a solar array of the probably entire upland area. Discussions that have been had amongst other elements in the town, board-wise, are what they might like to see for maximum use of the property from a couple different perspectives. The primary and first perspective, project only, is development thresholds that make sense. The one here that comes to mind is there's a 50-acre threshold for MEPA studies, which is the larger multifaceted state level review of a project of significant impact by acreage in this case, not only that criteria, but that's what gets solar categorically. So stopping at 50 makes a bit of sense, as does the idea and little bit of balance that using half the property is plenty to shorten up a whole bunch of other discussions. It obviously is an ecologically valuable property in town. That's not to say it can't be developed to some degree, but as if the wetlands were exactly like they were today, besides the crossings, I would stay out of your jurisdiction of 100-foot buffer proper. I can't memorize off the top of my head if you have a bylaw that has a larger jurisdiction, but using the more typical, state standard in absence thereof. So it would be a 50-50 split, right? I've got about a 50-acre footprint here in the blue, and the rest of the property would remain as is, mostly wetland and buffer, treed, because I only, of course, take the trees down that I need to. Other conversations you may hear that I'm talking with folks as part of this and exploring the possibilities. I like the idea of being able to conserve this property alongside of solar. I like when my solar properties can be a conservation vehicle that doesn't end up costing the public anything. Because once I can do the solar portion of the property, I don't really have a large desire to do other things. That's not my business. And it also just strikes a bit more of a development conservation balance. I did the first one of these down in Cape Cod 4 years ago, starting 4 years ago, in Sandwich at 180 Catuit Road, 18-acre version of this site, basically, without wetlands. And we were going through the process with the Cape Cod Commission, who requires offsets for development as part of their special county level regulations that the otherwise solar zoning does not get to intersect or get exemptions from at all. And it came up, well, we need to conserve some land and offset some of our footprint. And well, what is the land itself worth in that equation? And it just seemed to strike a good balance. We donated that land to the town. We leased it back from them as part of doing the solar, but ultimately it will be a conserved piece of land when the solar's done. And the part we didn't use, of course, steps into full conservation now. That would ended up being about 9 acres out of 19 that got conserved right away. And the buffer, very similar to this. That does have benefits for me in the SMART program, to be candid. They like when towns and public and municipal entities own land. It's a very valuable area inside the Beltway to have solar energy. Power prices are regrettably through the roof, especially in the Eversource, larger greater Boston load zone, which is where you guys in this project are. So there is certainly a demand signal for it, and you will build as big as we can, as dense as we can in the upland area. possible that if we have more wetlands, meaningfully more wetlands than expected or shown, those are hard to know what to expect or have a firm expectation, that I would look to do some selective cutting in the buffer if the commission were to allow it. That's of course a whole different actual hearing, and I don't want to go far into that of what that would take because it's just not the level we're trying to talk at tonight. But in the past, I have done, on these larger quasi-wetland upland sites, kind of a 50-50 touch of, stay out of the buffer, but cut, say, 50 feet of trees on the outside of the buffer towards the upland. I don't see any circumstances here where I ask for a lot more than that, just because I have the land to do it. And again, limits to reasons to do that are necessary rather than nice to haves. I don't generally consider nice to haves worth asking for that kind of consideration from the commissions. From a planning perspective, I believe I will probably use the majority of a 5,000 square foot impact that you are, authorized to, authorized to engage in or allow me to do on the crossings on the interior of the site. I have suspicions that this access on the east side is more wet than is shown. The west side, maybe not as bad, but will still probably be greater than 100 feet of wetland crossing and appropriate impact with your 15-foot-ish gravel road that is pretty standard for fire and construction access. And then the crossing over here, I'm not convinced this property line is perfect on the GIS. But the trails that get back to this second area do cut the corner of this picture by my phone tracking it. Here, and the red were trails I walked, but the phone's only about 25 feet laterally accurate. So it may cut the corner if this property line is there, in which case I'd either have to somehow get a disposition from you guys and the conservation easement, or we'd have to cut the corner off a wetland here if it indeed stays as shown. To further the conservation concept, which of course is a big part of your greater role rather than site-specific work, the idea would be do the solar and then donate the rest of the parcel to the town to do what it will. Generally, that means conservation. Doesn't have to, but I do feel like that's a good fit here. One of my, again, goals in stepping in with you guys very early, and I'll have to do this with the Trails Committee as well, is to find a way to maintain the trails and the usability of the site, obviously around the array, so that the community can pass by. Again, that's a goal of conservation. It dovetails pretty well. So that's, some design. I certainly can't send trails through it, but we can send trails around it. When we get real wetlands, I'll have obviously a much greater idea of what has to go where and where the boundaries are. But I would generally expect to place those trails, right around the array on the edge of the upland buffer to stay out of the wetlands, although I do expect there are a couple trails back here that sneak through them. Further, discussions with the town, largely select and planning board, but select board primarily, will be where I have the discussions on what is it worth if the town, were to take the land. They are, of course, allowed to ask for things that aren't zoning related, because nothing, of course, makes them take the property. So there are other, facets to how this project gets designed besides the wetlands. Just wanting you guys to be aware of, basically planning with their bylaws as obviously the normal permit review authority, you guys as wetlands, and then the select board and other various boards as part of the physical layout. And I guess I'll pause there for questions, and I will leave the screen up for now unless someone wants me to take it down to see everyone's faces larger. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anybody, obviously this is a ways off, and is there any general questions from the commission in terms of wetland issues?
Ooh, it's
Okay.
either good or bad.
Well, it's a little on the wetland side, it's a little interesting when you say that you're going to keep out of the wetlands in the buffer zone. It makes it a little outside of our jurisdiction. To some extent, obviously, the two crossings are an issue, something that I think had come up before when this was a Pulte project for 55 plus, we recognize for those who are around that that was an existing cart path, so that there was some existing ability to do a stream crossing there when that came up.
And you can even see it in the picture, you know, at this level, you can see it.
Right.
When this picture was taken, but it's
right.
Yeah.
Is there a bridge there of some kind for the cart path?
No, ma'am. You know, just you know, occasionally it's a little wetter in some spots, you know, the normal ruts to you know, larger ponding on just a couple spots on the road here. Bridges are something I have considered in the past, but usually you end up with, you know, you'd rather end up with several oversized culverts ends up being the right choice if your square footage impacts allows for it.
Yeah, there are issues of what, right, the stream crossing guidelines. I'll ask a question about the issue of that, given what you mentioned, depending on how the wetland delineation turns out. Do you have a you're fixed on the 50 acre, excuse me, I'm losing my voice here. That the 50 acre size is something that you're going to be pushing hard for in terms of even trying to get into buffer zone versus a reduced size project.
I would tell you, I haven't thought about, and like to the extent I haven't decided where that line would be. You know, if it were, you know, 47 acres, no, it's probably not worth it. You know, it really also depends on the shape of the wetlands. These are pretty solid, but they can get very skinny. And then of course, you know, a 10-foot wide wetland, you know, if there's like, you know, let's say a stream or something that goes up the hill, you know, a 10-foot wide wetland becomes 210 feet wide. From a tree perspective, and trees cast shade, and that ultimately reduces my total workable acreage, which is the primary driver of, you know, the system size and total value. So generally, like, you know, taking 50 feet, you know, off of this, if you were just to like carve it down, you know, and pull 50 feet back, I mean, you're talking about 200, 300, 4, 6, 8, about 1,500 feet. So 1,500 feet times a 50-foot gain is an acre and a half, right? When the wetlands are relatively not crazy squiggly,
sure, well, I understand.
that doesn't become such a huge give as to ask for it, right? Like there's got to be a need to a lot of that stuff. And if I've got, you know, upper 40s, great. It's just a little early to guesstimate.
Okay, but once you get closer to 40, that's an issue for you.
Yeah, I'll start, you know, the smaller it gets, the more you'll see me looking for certain considerations if it actually helps. You know, it might just be a big old wetland and there wouldn't be a huge, you know, give there.
Okay, just get a sense of scale. What kind of scale of this project? What are you doing in terms of megawatts per acre? What's the megawatt?
So that's a fun conversation for the solar world. The value in an ideal world on this site is the densest system possible. There is a dearth of solar in this area, land prices and development and density already, you know, having, you know, gotten to a very high point relative to Massachusetts and solar, you know, areas in general. So the more power you can make, the better. So it's not the best, you know, production per panel, but you'd like to make it the best, you know, production per acre of energy.
That's why I was just curious what the scale is, without getting into all the little nitty gritty.
Yeah, so I'd love to get to 2.5 acres a megawatt. Like that's a very dense system. Of course, I have to be able to connect it. That's step one. But if I could connect everything, I go as dense as I could towards that number.
Okay, so you don't have a sense yet of whether if you're talking about even 2 megawatt. Right.
No, but I mean, in an ideal world, this campus is 15 megawatts or more.
And you don't know whether you can connect that volume, that scale.
Not yet. No, that'll take the utility the better part of a year at least to determine. But regardless, you know, so if I can only connect like 4 megawatts, well, one, I'm not even sure I can afford the property. You know, I've got to pay the same price regardless. But that in case if you get capped at a smaller megawatt size, you'll spread the system out in the upland.
Okay, yeah, that's an area beyond our issues here in terms of, obviously it'd be nice to see if the trails sort of gets into our area. Could be maintained, but, okay, given other agenda items we have, do other people have any other questions they want to ask about? As we know, this will be going on for quite a while here. And they've got a number of steps to go through.
I guess
Anything
I'm curious if is there any kind of, once the whole thing is constructed, is there any kind of maintenance that requires access through, through that wetland area? Or is it pretty self-maintaining, or how does that work?
There would be a fence around the array. So the wetland jurisdictional areas wouldn't have maintenance as shown now. There is mowing of the array, or in an ideal world, sheep are better. This site's big enough to do that. A lot of the small ones aren't. But otherwise, the access road would be maintained as the 15-ish foot gravel road and the crossing. But there wouldn't be maintenance outside the array area. I don't think I'd need tree cuts unless something falls down, which in the fullness of the array's lifespan is possible, but not likely in the short term. No, not. I mean, just maintaining the field habitat that you create there.
Is it like a natural meadow field habitat? Like I've read recently about solar arrays, they're lifted quite high off the ground to allow more vegetation. Is that?
So there's a couple of different ways you can, make the physical space work for you. If you're trying to do grazing work underneath, and regardless, these things are getting a little taller over time, which doesn't really matter here for visibility to neighbors, but does matter for maintenance underneath. You might see these things trying to be 3 and 4 feet, chest high at the bottom of the panels, whether they've been, 2 feet in the past. And then one of the goals here, you use the area, if you're not going to do grazing where, goats and sheep will eat and, and pigs will eat anything. So you don't really invest in a pollinator habitat. But in the absence of that, you'll try to make the area very pollinator heavy. So it's a mix of grass and pollinator species that support, bees, butterflies, birds, all the sorts of things that need dedicated fields and that don't quite get them in Massachusetts because you end up with trees or pavement or the rare farms, but of course those get worked. So you maintain that because those take some effort to keep up to date.
Do you do any calculations about, when I know that there's already been some logging, but I've also, when I've walked in that area, because some of it has trails, it looks pretty wooded. And is there any calculation you make about the carbon removal versus the carbon the carbon removal of trees versus the carbon savings of solar arrays, and when that where do you cross that point where the solar array is paying off for the removal of those trees from a carbon perspective?
Yes, ma'am. Familiar question, the right question. I call that the carbon math to the whole equation. And the answer is pretty stark. The panels are, depending on how dirty your grid is, 10 to 20 times as carbon preventing as the trees are carbon sequestering. So with our current mix of power in, mostly natural gas and a mix of other things in New England, that's, you're very quickly displacing dirty power, or a mix of power that includes dirty power. And that's the 10 to 20 year. Are you displacing all natural gas? Or are you displacing a whole basket of things, including nuclear and wind and other things that bring your average carbon emissions down across an entire generation portfolio? The panels themselves take a year or two to work off their sort of carbon debt from their manufacturing. But they don't really change that full equation in a meaningful way. So basically a year of this system or any forest of solar setup is worth about 20 years of the sequestration of a forest. The forest in broadscape are our carbon budget, but they work in absolute volume, and it's just such a big, broad item. By example, Vermont, with 600,000 people total, very little industry, and a whole state full of trees, and a ton of clean power from hydro from Canada, might be carbon neutral as a state. I'm afraid there is simply no way to tree grow your way to carbon neutrality with our grid as it is today. It's just not mathematically possible. So
I'm
that
gonna-
is,
I'm going to say that given our agenda, that is a whole other wide area of discussion, including, and it gets much more bigger as to the broader environmental services, quote unquote, of trees that go beyond the carbon. which is
absolutely
Part of
Yes,
that
sir.
whole broader calculation, but yes, these calculations can be quite a game of consultants. And carbon above ground, carbon below ground. There's a lot of stuff that
true
I've
statement.
seen and I've even done myself.
Yeah, just the carbon
so,
math is
but-
not the full picture.
But in the end, right, it's carbon is not this whole thing, as you say, and the solar does do that. It's all a matter of what you're looking at the alternatives. If you're saying that you could do solar without cutting down trees, because you should basically have offshore wind. And so you get into these arguments about what are really the alternatives that are realistic and what's the time frame for them. If offshore wind was right around the corner here, one could say that, okay, hopefully we could avoid cutting trees. That's what some people argue, but if you don't get it, then you can make an issue, or you could say you get 5 years. So the carbon game is quite an interesting one. I'll put it at that. I'm going to end this now, but I appreciate you getting the starting out early so that people know what's going on and what the scales of the project is and such. And we'll see how you proceed and actually what you could actually get onto the grid. And there'll be other discussions for other people here about to what extent this has some value for the town in terms of its own efforts to become net zero. And to what this, I mean, this project at a scale actually could almost meet all of the residential demand in town. I've done the calculation
Yeah,
myself.
it's odd. It adds up right there to like a 9 kilowatt system on every rooftop, which is just
But
odd.
whatever, it's interesting to see, but there are pluses and minuses to all of this and
That's a true
alternatives.
statement, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, everybody, for your
Congratulations.
time. And you'll probably hear from me again formally sometime in the spring or the summer.
Okay,
Thank
Bye.
you, everybody.
bye-bye.
Goodbye.
And bye, Mr. Gray. Okay, everybody, moving back to our agenda here. Okay, we have the two things. We have the comments on Greenwood Homes. As some of you know, and maybe not all of you know, that when a 40B project is, affordable housing project is put forth to the town, the first little step is that they have that they've made their application to the Mass Housing Agency that oversees these projects. And Mass Housing does a review of these projects. It's I think a fairly narrow review in terms of what they look at. But they essentially ask the town to comment on the project. And so what's going on every town board of any that has any say or interest in a project, they ask for comments that are tied to their jurisdictions and what we deal with. So there is this, just as we've seen for our ANRADs, for the delineations for this property on Greenwood and Washington Street, there is that land is going to be broken up into 2 40B projects, of which the first one has been put forth. And I guess I don't know if we put the map of that one in did we not put it in the meeting folder?
I don't see it in this.
Yeah, I
Give me a
can
minute
pull it
and I'll
up
pull it up.
there.
If you give me a moment, I'll pull it up.
Okay, then you can pull it up. I know. So essentially what they've The first one is a small project of 4 homes that look like 4 suburban homes. They basically work as a 40B because they don't have to deal with local regulations. They can put in these 4 homes because they are basically scoped out at 0.9 acres each, which is less than, I think, the 2-acre zoning that for that area. And they might also be able to put these homes in because they might be able to meet state level septic regulations as opposed to local regulations on the septic. So they, the variances that they'll be looking for when they go to the comprehensive permit, which is, so basically these projects go before the zoning board of appeals for a comprehensive permit. And so you see 4 lots there that are carved out. And so therefore, they might be able to do a project there that would not otherwise have been done over the years, even though people have tested there, because they can go for a lower acreage per lot, as well as they might be able to find a viable septic system at the state level versus at the local level.
Can I ask you a question about that? So does it work the same way as our permitting where the Board of Health has to consider the projects under the state regs?
I don't know. In a project of this scale, I can't answer that because normally we see much larger projects that even that fall under the state regs anyway.
Right, these are just gonna be single family homes with their
Yeah.
own.
Right, so
Each-
any of the town bylaws are not in effect, it's whatever the state Title V regulations are.
But
So
so
it
that,
depends.
I'm assuming that would go through the Board of Health though and not through DEP.
Correct, right, so they review it under Title V. As
Yeah,
opposed to-
they've almost never had to do.
Yeah, I don't think this might be the first time they.
Yeah.
Didn't
For
they have
us,
to- Oh, they didn't have to do it for the other ones because they had central septic systems.
right, for us here, they have, so for people to be clear who haven't done it, that they will come to us at some point with a notice of intent that's under only the state regulations that we'll do here. The extent that we have any local bylaw related regulations that come into play, we can argue that if they need to be enforced or irrelevant, that is something we make the case before the ZBA, in front of the ZBA, when they are holding their hearings to see whether they grant them a comprehensive permit. And to some extent, if there are some aspects of our regulations that they deem that they want to include as the conditions there, then they will include it in that permit, or they are the ones who make the final decisions as to whether any of our local bylaw regulations are either waived or required to be met under the conditions of the comprehensive permit. Now, in terms of us, but coming all the way back at this beginning level, there's just general descriptions of comments about whatever concerns we might have that we can want to articulate from a wetlands protection point of view. As you can see on this thing here, that these projects that only in the very back of the lots number, I think it's 3 and 4, a little corner of lot 2, and sort of the back, we're looking at maybe 30 feet, let's see, on the scale here, where you look between the 50 and the 100-foot buffer zones, that's 50. We're looking at maybe as much as 40 feet there, going down to 0 on the lot 3, and sort of maybe a 10-foot down to 0, a small area in the back of lot 4. So there's a relatively small outer buffer. It's all natural buffer zone there. So the questions are whether we have concerns about, right, it would be nice to know, we don't know the extent of their development. They might leave those areas unaltered, in which case we would have no jurisdiction, we would have no concerns there. Even if they put the septic systems just outside of that, as we've learned, that's not much a strong argument to have much regulatory say. even if the septic fields are placed right next to the buffer zone. In this case, it looks like their planned septic systems are a ways away from the buffer zone. So-
Michael, are those darker rectangles actually their septic? What are those septic? Yeah, are those the
I
septic?
think that's their plan. Can you read it carefully? If I remember right, Joyce, those are.
Proposed
zoom
SAS,
in.
right?
I think it says
It's
proposed. septic.
tiny.
They say SSS, subsurface
So the proposed,
absorptions. Yeah,
Okay,
soil absorption, yeah, so the proposed septic areas, but they haven't done their testing yet, so we
so
don't know
who knows
exactly
where
where.
they'll come out.
This is conceptual.
All we could say is that in terms of whether we write a letter and what issues we want to raise, which could be issues of of the SASs, the septic fields in buffer zone, would be a concern for the wetlands. Is one of the few issues, other than the fact that we don't know the scope of development and the scope of altering the buffer zones. And so we would be concerned about where they plan, let's say, to cut down every tree up to the back lot and turn it all into lawn or into something else. At this point, there's no information about that, but that a concern we might have is, so we can write, so the question is to write a letter that has some of our concerns and they will decide what's relevant to put in their letter to Mass Housing Agency. These issues that I've thought about so far, I'm not sure they rise to the level of something that Mass Housing Agency will make some comment on. But I'm curious what other people who went on a site walk or in the past, we've commented on alteration of the buffer zones, especially since a lot of work has often been proposed in the outer buffer, sometimes in the inner buffer zone. So we raised concerns about water quality and such, and we've raised and the septic fields sometimes are in our jurisdiction. So we raised those kind of concerns for water quality and pollution prevention, as well as habitat and things like that. So the interests, but I only have the idea of just have a concern if the septic fields end up being near or in the buffer zone, that we would have the range of water quality and pollution prevention issues. And then
Is
just,
this
yeah.
Is this is a small enough development that they don't need to think about stormwater drain off from the house roofs or anything like that? None of that applies here.
I guess because it's what, 4 houses, but it's 4 individual. What I have problem is how the definition of a project is. Whether these are 4 separate projects or this is one project and therefore it has to meet stormwater.
So they're not required for, you're not creating a road and there's 4 individual houses, so they're not required to do stormwater.
but if it's a 40B, doesn't it have to be considered one project? Because otherwise, how do you get an affordable unit in there?
One of the units will be affordable.
But doesn't that then make it one project is my point. They aren't being built and sold as separate homes.
But is it 4 or more or 4 or less that have the stormwater? But I think individual, separate from whether it's a single is exempt. Is it 4 or more that could be?
I have to look up the language here. Hold on.
Well, what I would suggest is that we can make a comment of if there's any stormwater work, we would be concerned. Let's go, just to move on, we can make a comment about stormwater, that to the extent that there's stormwater management, we would have some concerns about its possible impact on the wetlands in the buffer zone. So that's another third area. Do people have other concerns that they could think of?
I think you brought up some of the main ones. I agree with the concerns you brought up, Michael.
Yeah, no, it's just a matter of we come up with a 4th. This one is somewhat simpler than many. Or it is the simplest one. Yeah,
I'm not sure if how it would have anything to do with our aspect jurisdiction, but there's this trail easement through. But will there be any way for people to get at the trailhead, or if unless they live?
it's not part of this project. The
Yeah.
trailhead is not part of the project, and the trails are all basically outside of outside of
Okay,
this.
so that's outside things we can.
Yeah,
comment
you
on.
can see they kind of run along the back, so people would be basically walking right through their backyards just off the property line.
Okay.
Can somebody close the meeting agenda so we can still see the plot plan?
Sorry,
I think maybe.
I think of other issues we've raised. Let's see. So we have stormwater, just the scope of alteration and where the septics are.
I also put all the Greenwood stuff in a folder on the shared drive just now. There's a lot of documents.
Yeah, well, there's just a few, right?
That's is
Uh,
that estimated habitat or anything?
No,
No,
I
okay.
don't.
oh, they've already checked that?
I thought they did that for the ANRAD.
Oh, I didn't think so.
No?
Because I know that area around Dirty Meadow, right near, part of that, I think, is either estimated or it has some status that comes up.
I guess we should go.
Or
look
maybe
at-
it was the NOI that they had initially submitted. Right, when I remember reading it somewhere. I don't know if it was in DEP's superseding order.
Well, let's go check that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the fourth issue, if there's estimated habitat. Again, these are things that are important from our point of view, and it's also a good checklist for when it goes through the comprehensive permit, the ZBA, that we think about these issues for them. Okay, that's another one. Any other thoughts?
so under
Have we-
stormwater, it's, you were right, it's 4 or fewer. The threshold is more than 4.
Right. And it's not disturbing, I guess, there's a certain amount of acreage. But it comes back to, I would write it as if by some chance there is a stormwater because of the way, because I think it's defined if you're altering a certain amount of acreage under even the bylaw. But whatever, I think we can leave it, make a statement saying to the extent that stormwater issues arise, that we would just have some concern about how that might impact the area of the jurisdiction. Okay, any more brainstorms? Because their comments were due on November 3rd. But I think they're asking for a 2 or 30-day extension. What we can do is, assuming that there's an extension, that a draft letter could be prepared for our November 3rd meeting. We could send it out to people and people could just see it before we send it in. So if people have other brainstorms of issues, email them to Courtney, me, and Joyce.
When did you say it has to be submitted to ZBA?
Well, they were going to submit it officially, it was November 3rd. We could send them, if it gets extended, we could have a letter. If it's not extended, a letter that we could bring back to our November 3rd meeting. If there is no extension, then I will say that, I don't think we voted on this in the past, that I will write with Joyce and Courtney, I'll just write up a short memo that just lists these issues that we just talked about. The 3 issues and plus the estimated habitat. I don't think that it's worth more than listing them as concerns because I don't think they rise to the level of something that Mass Housing, who could make some suggestions. Like if they, like on a project, they don't like the way the design is, that it's maybe not appropriate for the surrounding areas. in this case, they may say that they should take into account that issue. Here, here it's 4 houses, albeit they're probably twice as close together as they would be regularly. But maybe the select board would say, well, we think this is too dense for the neighborhood. And Mass Housing could say, oh, we think so too. But, excuse me. But whatever. So I guess these are the issues, unless somebody sends in a new issue before. But hopefully we'll know soon about whether it's extended. Otherwise,
Yeah, I'm looking at the Mass Mapper right now. I don't see anything.
Do you know where it is? It's on Greenwood, but I'm looking at it too. It's south of this property. So it's on
So
Greenwood,
there's no-
but it's not on
okay.
this property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no
so
house.
we have 3 issues. So we have the 3 issues. Anything else?
I mean, the one thing I would suggest, because I always feel like it's good to get these things to ZBA, is maybe we can make a motion, Michael, to empower you to write that letter if we've agreed that those are the primary issues. So that you
You
can,
could do that, right? Okay, it's to the select board at this point. It's not the ZBA.
okay,
If you want, we could do a motion that these 3 points can be put forth if it's not extended. Otherwise, it'll just be a draft. The draft will be submitted for review and just a quick vote on at our next meeting.
I would second that motion, that if it's not extended, that you write and submit that letter so that we get it into them in a timely way.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I thought I was saying.
Yes, no, and I'm agreeing with the.
I
word.
wasn't making a motion, but we'll have a motion. Motion is that if there's no extension, I am authorized to write a letter summarizing the 3 issues about the septic fields, the scope of alteration, and any possible stormwater. And I could submit that beforehand if it's not extended, and if it is extended, there'll be a draft for our next meeting to vote on.
Second,
Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, I, Courtney,
Aye.
Carol,
aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Jacob.
Aye.
Okay. So we're done with that topic.
Now we have an announcement that Steve's got to go get sworn in.
Ah,
Yes, I was approved tonight, but I guess need to go into the town hall to get.
yes, you have to physically go there and,
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
yes. Okay, so
Wait,
that's done.
Try to get that done tomorrow.
Okay. You might have to make sure you do it in the morning. I'm not sure what the hours are. I don't think the town clerk is open more than just the morning tomorrow.
Okay.
'Cause
Yeah,
it's-
definitely check the hours on the website, but the town clerk, you can also email, and a lot of times she can make appointments outside of hours. She spends too much time at town hall, so she's very flexible.
Okay, well, congratulations, Steve. Welcome. Okay, let's see, going back to our agenda thing here, I would like to, it's actually getting later now that it's all of a sudden 9:15. As I think we've covered everything except for the tree issues here, I'd like to come back to the discussion of a DOA. I'm going to pull up the DOA form.
You know what, Michael, can I make a suggestion in the interest of time? I pulled out my environmental handbook for Massachusetts Conservation Commissions, and
Mhm.
they have guidance there. And also, I know that not that long ago, you and Courtney, I think, talked to somebody at the state. Why don't we put this on a future agenda? I will summarize the guidance I'm seeing here. Maybe you guys can tell me any other guidance you've gotten from our circuit rider. I think the thing that I would like to do is, as much as possible, when I look at this handbook, it has specific guidance about when to do it and when not to do it, which is kind of what I was asking for.
Sure.
So I don't think it's such a great idea to talk about it verbally and everybody has to kind of process it verbally. I think it'd be better to try to get that in writing so that people understand it and can agree on it.
Okay, that'd be great if you want to pull out the stuff from that, I guess.
Yeah, it's right here.
So, right,
Next meeting, you're thinking? I guess what's our next agenda looking like?
So we have, I put, land management from 7:15 to 7:30, and then from 7:30 to, probably 8:15. We have the NOI for 3 Prospect Street,
you
and
think
that's all that's on the
45
agenda at this moment.
Okay.
so the, okay, so let's try, so we have that, and, I guess I haven't looked at the NOI, you don't think it's gonna be that complicated, I guess, because
No, I do. I think the NOI will be complicated, but, I don't know what to. I mean, 45 minutes is a long time for a discussion.
yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I guess it's gonna be probably just a contentious thing, and we just have to.
Oh,
decide
I'm
what
not saying
we're
it's contentious. I'm just saying there'll be details you're gonna want to talk about.
gonna- Okay, so we can put this on the next, so we'll put this on under as a discussion item at the next meeting, and maybe Carol, you can extract some stuff, even if you just
I will.
send us pictures.
Yeah.
Or though, I guess somebody has online access. I haven't looked at the online handbook. I have the same, I like the paper version, but now it's all gone online. And Courtney probably, or somebody has the online access that maybe you can get access to, so that you could actually snip from the latest version of the handbook.
Do you have that, Courtney?
I have to double check. I think I have a subscription to the MACC.
I mean, there's 2 pages also, by the way, that I can just scan and I can share it with you, Courtney, so you can see if you can find it. It's
Sure.
pretty, it does look quite straightforward, but what's nice about it is it has specific standards, which I think, at least for me, are helpful.
Sure, no, it'd be good to review that kind of stuff. We've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be a discussion item next time. And the land management is there. Yeah, I can't tell if on our own at some points. I guess it's nice that it's a light agenda, because I guess it's exactly 2 weeks from now. So we can't get another NOI on there, so we will definitely have, or an RDA.
There's nothing else that can be added.
Okay, so that, in that sense, that'll be nice, because at some point, I guess just so I'm a little, even though Kelly was modest about when the thing is, we're gonna have a budget issue coming up, but we do have significant issues of land management. I can't tell to what extent to familiarize ourselves. I guess I don't want to do it at the next meeting, because we want to get closure on this tree plant. Question is how prepared are we to tackle the some at this time? Geez, it's only been 2 hours as opposed to our whether there's some guidance, Jacob, that you want to push on the draft, whether on the tree planting, which we'll put on the next one, and really hopefully you can finish. Are there any specific issues that you would like to lead a little discussion of that would get some?
I mean, what I'd like to do is to spend maybe 5 minutes sort of having everybody read through the current draft and figure out which parts of it need more revisions or need more discussion.
Okay,
I have some thoughts on that. I took a look at your draft, and I mean, I think it's great. It's good work. I've got a couple comments, but I mean, I don't need to wordsmith your draft with you right now. I think we can probably do that offline.
Yeah, wordsmithing seems fine offline, but I want to figure out if there are areas where we need a larger, broader discussion
just the
around
bigger picture, kind of bigger picture issues.
Yeah, bigger picture items.
Well, first of all, weren't we planning on having a trigger for if there was a significant possibility of injury or property damage with an imminent threat whereby they did not need to go through the approval process and they could just take the thing down? Because I didn't see anything like that in here.
Well, so that's in the state regulations, and that we've spoken directly with DEP, and their definition of immediate threat to health and safety means like a tree that's laying on a house, they can get an emergency certification to cut the part of the tree off of their house. Like it's not like there's a dead tree here that could fall on our house in a storm. It's not like that.
Yeah, that was right.
And it's also very limited in scope to mitigating the immediate hazard and not doing anything else. So like, if part of a tree branch was, broken or something, and, a large part of the tree was hanging, they could cut that part back, but they couldn't do anything with the rest of the tree, kind of thing. That's the sort of emergency.
So what's in the,
We do have a sentence. He has it in the second paragraph. It's there.
Yeah,
Now, there is a sentence there, right, in the second paragraph that alerts that there is an emergency.
that there is a process. Yeah.
So that people can then call in and say, and we could tell them, okay, it's emergency, not an emergency under our stuff. So it's in the draft. I could, and I don't know if everybody,
I mean, I'm looking at it here.
here, I have it on the screen here. I'm just right here. If this is big enough, is this too small for people?
The second paragraph, if you have dead or live trees in the wetlands and their buffer zone that might cause immediate harm to people or property, please contact us for a possible emergency certification for tree work.
All right.
One thing that maybe one helpful thing for me in a way would be Jacob suggested kind of taking 5 minutes to go through it and kind of highlight what you feel like we should be paying attention to. I think that would be great to hear that.
yeah, because especially if we haven't all read what's here now, I think we'd have a better conversation if we did take that
Whoa,
time.
sorry, guys.
Yeah, I think that would be, it's not a very long document, and I did scan it, but you've spent a lot of time with it, so I'd love to take that approach if other people are amenable to it.
Which is, we should all read it now and come back, reconvene in 5 or 10 minutes.
Yep.
Not everybody, it's a way of forcing, because and it's only the high level. It's not wordsmithing.
Yeah, I would almost even say that we don't have to worry so much about the first couple of paragraphs, so much as like the details of this, what it applies to. It's very, you've laid it out pretty well. So, like whether or not we need all these things included on the application, or, is this review process okay? I think, is that the kind of feedback you're looking for?
Right.
Jacob?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and also the is this the right organization? Because I reorganized what was quite a bit from what was in the Lincoln draft into what's here now. Okay, so why don't we
Yeah, I guess I give you, right, okay.
So why don't, since I've already read this, why don't I put this up? How about I screen share for it? Do we have any audience members who don't have access to this?
I
I
put it up
I
here. I
don't.
put it up here just so people could see. I assume you're seeing my screen.
Right, but if, yeah, okay.
Well, if Jacob screen shares, then he can point things out. Michael.
He's not walking through it. We're supposed to give him feedback.
Oh,
Okay, so why don't
Okay.
Yeah, so so it's 9:27 now. How about I'll check back in 5 minutes and see how people are doing.
That's good. We'll give it to that. Yeah.
No, I don't have access to this. I'm not a voting
That's
member
okay.
though.
Well,
But
I
you're
would-
you're
put up
absolutely
on the
welcome
screen.
to comment.
Why don't you
Yes.
put, then I'll put it back up on the screen for you. Let's see.
I mean, I'm not worried about it. It's,
I'm not too worried, but I'll just, we don't lose anything by having it up. I'd rather see this and less of you.
What?
Michael.
Steve, since you're reading my screen, should I go back to anything in particular?
No, I have questions, but no, nothing in particular.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michael, did you ask if people had questions? Was that,
No, I was just asking, since he's reading my screen, I wanted to go back to, and I was reading at the same time, so I was. Didn't know,
Is everyone finished reading now?
sure.
Okay, so what areas do we, maybe we should collect a list of topics that we want to discuss first.
I have one. I'm not totally sold on replacing a mature tree with 2 shrubs.
I agree. I agree. I had a question about that too.
Mitigation is an area. I agree. Okay, that's one area. I have a question about the area of how hard it is or easy for people to come up with a map that shows wetlands in 100 feet.
Yeah, it turns out that that's very easy in Lincoln and very hard here because of the way their mapping system works. So that is definitely a valid question.
Okay. Yeah, even just the use of the word, adding up the word approximate or estimated everywhere throughout, whenever there's stuff there.
We might need to give some guidance on that too. I don't know.
Yeah,
Where they can look it up.
Or just they can make their best guess.
Yeah.
And the question is whether this is always going to have a site visit by the agent. So the agent can basically confirm whether these not confirm, but make her own guesses as to what it is.
I was actually wondering if we should be even more vague than that, saying if you know where the wetland boundaries are, please show them on the map. But if you don't know, say you don't know, or something to that effect.
Yeah, right. I agree. I could believe that kind of qualification. That that you think your trees are in or within 100 feet of some sort of wetland. To do it, to mark it there. I mean, the question is to what extent does that mean they should? I guess we'd like them to fill out the application before they would get the site visit, so it's one site visit, but maybe the question is whether we leave it open. I guess Joyce is not here anymore, I think.
May I ask how often this comes up? You know,
I'm still here.
Oh, there you are.
She didn't go anywhere.
Chuck, let me ask you this, Joyce. Before I, sorry to jump to you, Steve. I'll just want to do this thing and then you can go, Steve. I don't know why. Oh, there you are. For some reason, didn't show. What about the idea if people don't know, they think they have trees? You go out there and they call in and say, I want to cut them. You say, fill out this form. They look at, wow, I don't know where my wetlands are. But it depends how many site visits do you want to make for each application? Like a first one to say, oh, there's wetlands over there, whether you're going to go out there anyway and say, oh, these trees aren't in your wetland or these trees are in the buffer. And you're going to make some approximate judgment in the field, just helping them. And then they fill out the application and maybe you don't need to go look at it again if the application is fine. So that we could actually write in the application that you can get an initial site visit as part of filling it out. I don't know. We used to charge, I mean, for RDAs and other things, we have $35 fee for a site visit. But I think we can avoid any money here because it's complicating and we don't want to discourage people.
Well, you're right. You do want to make it simple, and I think there's never been a person calling to have a tree removed either under an emergency or anything else where it hasn't been in the buffer, typically people know that where their wetlands are in a general manner.
Oh,
I mean, I haven't had anybody call about a tree that the tree there wasn't wetlands there and they weren't in the buffer zone.
Is that the same thing? Is that saying the same thing as they would know well enough to be able to draw a line on a sketch though?
So think about the 78 Harrington Ridge Road where they did an RDA and she had that really rudimentary sketch that showed kind of the house and the street and the trees. That's really all that was necessary. I mean, that was really a pretty simple sketch.
it
And
didn't
that,
include, it didn't include a wetland buffer. It just,
not at all,
it
but,
just included the fact that all these trees are in the buffer.
right. So
So
if
that
somebody
does
calls up
change
and
the
says, I
wording.
want to take down trees, and they call the office and say, you know, I'm concerned about my trees and I want to take them down. If we go out, you know, they would call the office and ask us to come out and take a look at it. And then if we say, okay, yes, you have no wetlands, then you don't have to do anything. But if you have wetlands, then you have to fill out this application. That
Okay, so
hasn't
how
happened.
about I change this to say include an informal sketch, and the informal sketch should just say the approximation of the wetland locations, and if you know the extent of the buffer zones, and leave it at that.
You
And
could
then-
probably, we probably don't even need that information based on what Joyce just said. Like, they should sketch out, like in relation to the house or the driveway or any other structures, and they can include any other information that they know. Like if they know the location of the wetlands, great, but they don't have to freak out about that. They just need to show some kind of rough sketch, and I'm sure if Joyce goes out there, she's gonna know whether it's in the buffer or not, and whether or not their sketch is you know, completely fine, or if it's adequate, or if it's like somebody has no sense of direction and maybe she can tell them how to redraw it.
I mean,
Maybe reword it.
This is really just a tool that is going to allow the general public to be able to take out X number of trees a year without have to go through a permit. So really, this is just a way to educate them and get a formal response to trees they want to take down. So they don't need to flag their wetlands. They don't need to have a fancy sketch. It just makes it easier if they can, you know, do like that's the seven. And if you look back in the last meeting's file folder under 78 and look at the sketch they did, you can see it's just very simple, but it was easy to be able to walk around and say tree number 1, tree number 2, tree number 3, and respond to that.
What do you think about maybe rewording it to say the approximate location of wetlands and related to trees? Like, I think that would be enough to give people the idea of, okay, you know, I'm just looking for wetlands that are near these trees. I'm going to try to show that.
I almost feel like you shouldn't even bring that up, because that sounds, it just should have a informal map showing the proposed trees to be cut and numbered.
Oh, you don't think they should even say where the wetlands are?
Like just to say they're off to the side here on the left side of this picture or the top side of the picture.
I bet a lot of people like, you know, what Joyce said rang very true to me, that, you know, there are lots of people with wetlands that in the spring they fill up. So they actually probably have a pretty decent idea of where the wetlands are on their properties.
How about just saying, if you know where they are, just roughly indicate
Yeah.
where they are, or in what direction they are from the trees.
I think that makes sense. I mean, if they, yeah, we're not required to include it, but if you know, it would be helpful.
Sure. Okay.
I have a question. On 1A, it says when a landowner believes a tree presents a significant risk of injury or property damage, is that Is it what we want? I'm asking. Is it just so when people want to clear some trees in their property and they happen to be in the buffer zone? Or I'm not clear what the intent of 1A is.
So my understanding is that if it's healthy trees and they happen to be a buffer zone and the customer and a homeowner wants to remove them, that we would want an RDA for. If it's I've got a bunch of dead trees, they're going to fall in something, or they're leaning over something, or the tree is damaged, that's what this form is for.
Okay. And that's what happens too?
Yeah, that's what we get requests for.
Okay.
A lot of requests. I mean, and also usually a lot of these trees are dead or dying, and so they don't even have a canopy anymore. That could be, so that they're definitely of lesser value to the wetland. In terms of shading, I mean, there's plenty of other functions that they would provide, but they have more potential to cause damage. So we want to expedite that.
Okay, thank you.
If you might not have had a chance to read it, but the third paragraph says permission to remove healthy living trees or dead trees that do not create a safety risk need to be evaluated by a different process called a request for determination of applicability.
All right, I'm learning.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, moving on the list. Do we have, another topic was, do we want to have a limit? I guess we don't need a limit over time here because these are all trees that are dangerous. They have a lot of dangerous trees. They have a lot of dangerous trees.
Yeah, I didn't see a reason to say, oh, you can only use this form once a period of time.
Yeah.
I think periodically we might sort of
Okay.
ask to just scan
Fine.
through what applications
No
we're getting.
problem.
It turns out to be a problem.
Let's go to mitigation.
I guess one question I had for Joyce in particular before on our way there is did the proposed conditions, removal conditions here seem reasonable? I guess we can take that offline if that's easier.
Yeah, I'll go over that and email you any comments I have.
You know, we could all wordsmith it there, right? The definition of a large brand, whatever. Okay,
I mean, I thought they looked pretty good, actually.
yeah.
Okay, so onto the mitigation. So we want to change this such that, or actually, so when do we want to say what do we want to say about when it's okay to substitute shrubs instead of trees? I guess we haven't had is that sort of,
And there's no other option is what I have in mind. My personal opinion. It's like, if they can put a tree somewhere that is going to provide functions and values, I know there's going to be some situations where there just isn't a place to put a tree. And I'm fine with having the agent evaluate those situations, and but that should be a waiver kind of thing. Other people can convince me otherwise if they don't like that.
My thought with number 1, mitigation was A and then 1 for each large tree is, I was also concerned that there's large trees and then there's smaller understory trees. And if you have a tree that's 12 inches in diameter at 4 feet above the ground, that's a large shade tree. I mean, that's a piece of habitat. And I would prefer that said that they shall plant 1 native shade tree so that people understand that we're not asking them to put like a tree that only gets about 12 feet high. I know in some circumstances, if it's too close to the house or something, that might be a danger, but then maybe we might say, or 2 understory trees, or smaller trees or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. A small tree is not small in small and full grown size. That would be like a next best option. and shrubs would be like kind of the last option if there's really no good place to put another tree.
It seems so rare, though, in Sherborn properties that wouldn't be room for a couple of small trees. I mean, it might happen.
I mean, but I guess I'm like, it might be limited in terms of where it would actually be of benefit to the wetland and the buffer zone. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's my only thought.
Right.
Like, oh, well, we can't put any trees here that would, be useful to the wetland, but we can put one over there in the upland and in our yard. And it's like, I mean, planting trees is good, but it doesn't necessarily help the wetland per se. I guess that's the only situation I was thinking of where it was better to have them put shrubs in like the buffer zone or whatever.
Do we want to have a default of? I mean, I actually had an issue of just the magnitude too, somehow for each large tree, 12 or beyond. I actually wouldn't mind requesting 2 trees or something of that scale, depending on the canopy loss. And whether to make it here that shrubs are an alternative upon request, so to speak. Whether to make the shrubs something that they would have to actively ask for. Whereas I would leaning to just changing it to, for the larger trees, that would be 2 native sort of shade trees, or I don't know what adjective to put in there.
Canopy trees.
Canopy trees, but in the FAQ, hopefully we explain canopy and snags and wildlife. Since those are important values for us to explain the whole canopy issue, but I would change 1 and 2 to A1 and 2.
That could be a waiver. That could be like, the trees were damaged. If you're asking for a waiver, you can ask for not putting in mitigation or putting in something besides a canopy tree. And we
Sure,
could just say,
so we can make 1 and 2 just about tree replacement, and then on the waivers, we could add a 3 that just says, I was trying to make it a little easier that you keep the rubber shrub up there under A versus C.
I mean, you could say like, I guess you could go either way, but I was thinking under 3, like, I mean, C, there would be a 0.3. There's no safe place to put another canopy tree. I don't know.
Okay, you can put that in there. We're not going to wordsmith now.
Yeah, I'm like,
But
we'll
we
figure
basically
that
got
out.
the idea that I think the question is
think-
whether we agree with the mitigation being, I'm still
So
putting
the-
next thing.
Can I summarize here? So the proposed change is we'll remove the shrubs and sort of have that as a suggestion as in the waiver section. The 12-inch or larger tree, that will stay 2 native shade trees or something to that effect, and the small, less than 12 inches, will say 1 native shade tree.
What is a shade tree versus another kind of tree?
Not sure yet.
I think
maybe we should.
Is the goal that we just wanted to have a tree that will grow large if the canopy was there? I don't know how you say a tree that's going to grow like a small, like a dogwood that's more limited versus.
That would be an
something like an
understory
oak.
tree or something.
Well,
We
just
could
have to
call it a
figure
canopy, or probably the biological term would be a canopy tree versus an understory tree. I don't know if the average person will understand that, but
But then we're going to put it in the FAQs.
Yeah,
We'll
there'll
put
be
it in the definition.
examples, right? We're gonna have like sample.
Okay. So we agree with the concept that we're stepping it up, the two trees of 2 canopy trees there. And there could be we already have waivers, waiver 2. C2 gives them to ask for a waiver if they felt like there's enough canopy and this and that they want to get out of the mitigation. Okay, so we have an option out in C2, and A1 and 2 could be 2 trees and then 1 tree. And then we'd have another waiver 3 that could say, discuss shrubs versus trees. that enough guidance on that area
Yep.
to move things along? Let's see, what other things that so there is going to be is there an FAQ? There's a good FAQ from Lincoln and others that we would adopt?
The FAQ there needs work. I wouldn't copy it directly. Their list of replacement trees and shrubs, I would copy almost verbatim.
Okay, so we could have a draft of that for next to put there, and hopefully we just explain this canopy and snag stuff. And we could add a lot of approximation. Diameter, breast height. I guess everybody can estimate the diameter. We don't have to do the silliness of telling them to measure the circumference and divide. And that may be
I have
condescending.
diameter tape, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right, diameter tapes. I forgot all about that. Let's see, otherwise. Yeah,
Look at that. We're pretty close to something here.
and as
Okay.
I was talking with Jacob once recently, that I said, once we can get something out, and as it gets applied, it won't take much to amend it. So we get something out that we, in practice, we find some gaps or people don't understand. We can readily revise this.
Okay, what about the application form itself? Because that's closer to being copied from Lincoln, and I wonder if there are things on here that we don't actually need, or things that we're missing. So, for example, it's not really asking for to give a list of what kind of mitigation trees are you going to plant.
Mhm.
Well, this is the request, so does that mean that they will, come
I
to the
think that-
commission and then they'll tell us then, yeah, should there be a D that says proposed plantings after the reason for the tree removal?
There is a section that's talking about mitigation, but actually before the distance to wetlands, I think that
You
needs
could
an
drop. You could drop this column.
Okay.
Or maybe don't drop it, but like when the application comes in and the agent goes out to review it, maybe that's a number that can be filled in. Having the application in front of the agent,
Then we have to specify that this is to be filled in by the agent.
or if known, or distance to wetlands if known, or.
I
Fill
would
out
say,
what
because we don't want to include it and have somebody get stuck and not know how to finish it because they
Oh.
can't answer.
But maybe just say then fill in what you can.
You could say approximate distance, put approximate everywhere. Approximate distance to wetland if known. Or
That
uh,
works. I think that works. I actually think there's loads of people who are just gonna pull out a measuring tape and do their best with it, and that's probably not bad. It'll give us a general idea to begin with.
Okay, yeah, these are supposed to all be the sort of underline gaps here, but that's actually, no, actually it doesn't matter either way.
And hopefully we'll make this form available as a doc. So people can edit in here. So here you have, the E has the mitigation
Yeah,
stuff,
that has to be updated.
right?
Should I even mention the here's where you could get a starting plot plan, or is it likely that it's going to be a small area of everyone's yard that they're looking at, and therefore just saying, please draw a sketch?
I think
is gonna
people
be-
might like seeing that stuff, so I think it's worth putting there. You could soften it by saying, if interested, you could work from.
We could probably also include just a sample sketch, in the package that shows a house and some trees and just something really simple for them to look at.
Okay, so let's see, who's got a, let's see, I don't know, we need a kid to do a sketch. Matt, how old are your kids? Or we can get James, or maybe we make it a James homework problem. That he can draw a sketch of a house and trees.
It will end up with like zombies on it or something.
Oh, okay. That'll at least make the application more
exciting.
user amusing. I guess you'd have to change what the sketch might show, so edit this whole thing here.
Yep.
Okay,
Maybe we could use a sketch that somebody has submitted, but we kind of like white out
not a sketch that we kind of like better.
yours.
Okay,
I'm like, I feel like Joyce could make one of these up
Yeah.
in her sleep.
I'll come up with something simple.
okay. Anything else?
I think I wanted to just say, Jacob, I think this is so helpful and really well organized, and thank you.
So people can send in wordsmithing to him with
Yep.
your track edits on any of this.
Yeah,
Okay,
can try
when you
to push this
revise it,
forward for
send it
so
out
long.
again, a draft, so that we can actually, even before the next meeting if possible, do our wordsmithing, because maybe we, I guess if depending on how easy it is to just mock up a version of this guides here, just so that maybe we could actually, I'd like to think at the next meeting, we'll approve something. Even if we revise it, but even if it's missing some things, we could always keep improving the FAQ as issues come up. But I think at the next meeting, we should be able to finalize and vote on something. And then try it and see how it works. Okay. I guess we're done. Joyce, any issues before we,
None.
none. Anybody else? I think we've gone through the agenda. Let's see, where is my, oh, there it is. Let's see, I'm looking at my agenda here. Okay. That's it then. We'll see how things go between now and then, and at our next meeting, we can welcome you, Steve. And we'll get you, as soon as you get in there, you got to get an email address, and then you can get access to all this online stuff.
Great. Thanks.
Okie dokie, everybody. I moved to adjourn at 10:02.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, I. Jacob,
Hi.
Carol,
Aye.
Courtney.
Nay, I mean, I.
Man,
Got carried away.
yeah, a little feisty now. It's still at 10 o'clock. Matt?
Hi.
Okay.
I think I'm deranged. I think I've moved
Okay, fine.
beyond.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
And until next time. Bye.
Night.
All right.